Quick disclaimer, this was made a while ago, so a lot of it is outdated, but hopefully you'll still enjoy it. Okay, bye! Hello Vinaigrets, my name is Vin, I'm an aspiring artist, and today I'll be showing you the process of my first AP folio sculpture for this year. If you're unaware, AP Art stands for Advanced Placement Art. In AP, you're given 3 categories to choose from: drawing, 2D design, and 3D design, the one I'm in. Your schoolwork is to create a portfolio of up to 16 pieces made throughout the year to follow a developing theme, otherwise known as an inquiry question. It's the why of your work, and embodies what inspired you to create. Now last year, I made a portfolio and I got a 5, and so this year I aim to push myself more creatively and personally with my work and my abilities. So after careful thought, I landed on my theme, which boils down to, how can I personify fears? I mainly chose this because I wanted an excuse to make character designs. Being fascinated through sculpture as of late, and wanting to take something interesting, especially something cool like phobias. And as I progress in my portfolio, I can illustrate fears that impact me. That's the perfect blend. However, there was a problem. I've never really sculpted anything outside of an unfinished donut, and a juice box. So by all means, this is not a tutorial, but just an analysis of my process for my first piece. I don't know what I'm doing, but that's the fun of it, because one day I will. I just need to take the step to get there. But without further ado, let's jump into it. My first step is planning. What fear will I illustrate first? How will my character look? What pose will show the most dismay? It is a fear after all. I decided to start with Anthophobia, the fear of flowers. It got me thinking about Hanahaki disease, a popular fictional trope in which a character coughs up flower petals that stem from their lungs and heart when they suffer from one-sided love. They occur when their crush returns their feelings, or through surgically removing the flowers. When the infection is removed intentionally, the person's romantic feelings for their crush also disappear. The term Hanahaki comes from the Japanese word hana, which means flower, and hakimasu, which means to throw up. Now, there won't be a crush in my sculpture, but the idea of flowers sprouting from the inside will be a good base for the phobia. But I wanted to branch further. Why else is someone be afraid of flowers? Maybe the pollen? Or the thorns of a rose? Or perhaps the bees that surround them? Keeping these ideas in mind, I sketched up some ideas for my character and settled on this composition. The leading lines and pose draw the viewer's eyes in a satisfying way, and the contrast helps sections stand out. Composition in mind, I began to create multiple digital color variations so I could decide on which one I liked the most. One was cool, but read more as a ghost than a flower girl. 3 felt floral but had really bad contrast. 4 is the same, the pastels obscured the 4, making it hard to read. 2 is the winner, holding bright floral-esque colors and clarity of concept. Now that the east stuff is out of the way, it's time to learn. Here are the tutorials I followed, and the TLW rating of each. My approach was to sculpt the head, body, hornet, pollen, and finally the flowers. A piece of cake, right? So naturally, things didn't really go as planned. Eventually, I was able to get it looking right. As I worked, I learned some important stuff. Shortcuts are a lifesaver. Knowing a majority of them makes watching tutorials easier if the creator doesn't specify on what they're doing. Don't combine until everything in that group is melded well. I had a lot of problems not being able to rotate or fix a part because it was already connected, I need a hand. Also, you don't need to combine everything. I think the way to combine, to make things, connected, like a hand and like the arm, for example, you kind of have to if you want to blend those together. But I could be wrong. Like I said, take this with a grain of salt. I don't know what I'm doing. I decided to sculpt the character in her pose, mainly because I didn't plan on rigging this model and I wanted to finish it ASAP. I wanted to leave the flowers for last so I could easily sculpt them all and add them wherever needed, but it took me a while to figure out her hands, shorts, and proportions. I used a bunch of off-screen references to aid me. Specifically, I used an app called PureRef, not sponsored, which is any kind of artist, writer, composer, graphic designer you need to use. It's a free desktop app where you can copy and paste a bunch of images, links, and words, and organize them in an infinite space. I later hid it from recordings, but I still use it throughout the whole process. Highly recommend. It really changed my workflow. Once the main components are modeled, I made sure she looked okay at the side and back view. When modeling, you want to consider all sides if that's the only way to view your model, even if you're basing it on a front view sketch. It makes the whole model much more cohesive. except it was a hornet, who was relatively easy outside of the stinking wings. I watched one tutorial, simple and quick, and later on a problem, the wireframe modifier not creating wireframe for the whole wings. I did quite literally everything that my two brain cells could think of, and eventually fudged it. The wings should be admired at a distance. Anything else is, just squint, and you're fine. And then came the pollen. I wasn't quite sure on how to approach it. If I made a bunch of particles, I risked Blender running on 5 frames, but it looked much better than the modeled makeshift blob. Or so I thought. I decided to take a chance at lag and try my hand at particle effects. However, there was a problem with particle effects was that they were geometry, and they were tied to animation. I needed them to be still for my sculpture, so I tried turning the pollen into geometry, and ended up with 15,000 isometric spheres to go with manually. I lost 2 hours to those dang particles! Anyway, I'm sure with 2 or more years of experience, I'd be able to get in this day. But since I don't know anything, I decided to sculpt the form of the pollen. After that, I landed on the flowers. I made a base of about 3 modeled flowers and left the rest to be grease pencil objects, along with the blood. It made my life much easier. And it was really fun. That was until texture painting. To texture paint, you first have to UV unwrap your model. In short, you know those paper doll sheets or 3D shape nets you used to make a cube or a character with in elementary? This is kinda like that. You need to make cuts or seams into your model so that Blender can make a paper doll sheet for texture to sit on. You can also just let Blender do it itself, but it leaves noticeable seams and isn't super efficient. You only want to make seams in unnoticeable places so the texture doesn't leave a seam line. To make sure I'm making good seams, I'm using this grid texture. It'll tell me if the texture works. You want to be able to see a grid, not a mishmash of triangles. The other side here is the unwrap. It'll tell you if it's good by color. Blue is really good, red is really bad. Once I did a passable job on every single piece, I was finally ready to begin painting the model. And at this point, Blender started lagging, so bear with the footage here. I had one material to things that didn't need a paint job to save resources. And after every single piece had color, created some atmospherical pollen particles. This time it worked! I moved to the shading viewpoint to mess with some lighting and shaders and did a little spin animation. And here's the final result. The mesh is atrocious. The models are crunchy and the look is passable, but for my first finished model, I'm really proud of it. Hopefully you enjoyed this funky little video and maybe learned something? I don't know, but thanks for watching.